Hello guys, this is a talk video with Hivlik where I wanted to discuss some ideas that I had and I wanted to hear Hivlik's thoughts about it and let's just get right into it. I find that there's a problem with the kits that we have right now and with what we have chosen are the ranked kits, and I think that we should possibly slim them down, and I'll explain why and why not you should do that. Currently we have 12 kits. However, the kit that is only really played a lot and which ranking has value, if somebody hits masters in the kit that I'm talking about is build. If somebody hits masters in this, this is huge news, video blows up, it means a lot, there's status, it's competitive, it's played by many. However, for all the other kits, the rankings don't have that much meaning, and that is because of the two following points, which base around people just not playing them. And there's two arguments that, one, because people don't play, whenever you are high ranked, you can still queue against non-play, silvers, whatever. And two, because it's not played, the best players cannot be asked to play all 12 of the kits, and therefore, because the best players don't play every kit, it doesn't mean anything if you are really high ranking in that kit. And therefore I wanted to discuss if it is worth of slimming down kits, because you therefore do lose some kind of skill sets in some of the kits, because if Badlion is probably going to be the face of competitive PvP, so them taking away a kit could mean the end of said skill set or kit. And do we want that? Is that worth it for the goal of creating more competitivity? I think that was the best summary I could give.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that skill sets, the problems that would arise just by removing kits. Like you said, these skill sets would disappear. These communities would disappear. We already have some kits that don't have a community at all, like SG or Iron and Diamond OCN, or well, to an extent. But I think by nature, the more popular kits are more valuable, should be better represented in the global leaderboard. And like I was saying a little bit before, I think we should tailor all the kits to revolve around this idea of finding the most well-rounded player, the most global player, the best one on that global leaderboard. And to do that, we should give more value to these more popular kits like Build UHC and No Debuff. We should say that these skill sets are more important. But we still want to find, like, the reason that kits get less popular and lose their player base is because the community falls out. There's no game mode to practice with them. Like, the Iron and Diamond kits used to be the most popular kits on Badlion, but as OCN declined, there was no reason to play Iron or Diamond. It was just for the people who played Badlion for Badlion, rather than Badlion to practice for another game mode. And as Badlion becomes the thing to practice for, as we move forward into competitive, as we make these new game modes, then I think the arena game mode should reflect that. I think it's true that if we like get rid of some kits, slim it down, it's 12 now to like 7 or 6. We would be getting rid of some skill sets. Hopefully, the least important ones, the ones we want to highlight the least, like Horse,
Yeah.
or maybe Soup. Soup is a very different game mode from all the other kits, but there's nothing to practice. Like as we come out with these new game modes like Rush and CTF, we should have arena kits that help players practice for those game modes.
There's a few ways to go about this. I think what you could do is either go by kits that are used in game modes that are still popular, like you said, or have a philosophy like there's a lot to PvP, and we are gonna make 5, 4, 5, 6, I don't know how many, kits that all reflect one asset or one skill set in the game. And if you add them all together, you have the all-round package, everything, which is global.
Right.
So, do you just want to get the most popular kits, or do you want to remake kits so that you kind of reach everything with as minimal kits as you can?
I mean that becomes harder. Like as you add things to a game mode or a kit, you lose some of the other skill sets. As you add skill sets, you're losing other ones. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine if you tried to add rod to iron. It changed entirely.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be trying to represent the rod skill set, um, but you'd be losing maybe some of the bow skill or the pure melee skill. I mean, we could do that in some cases. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I think it's an easier path to take to just take the most popular kits or design new kits.
Okay, so we have 12 kits right now. And we have, you could say Archer, UHC, and Iron are heavy on the bow. Horse is just specific on itself, or it's thus specific that it's only really one skill that it trains, which is the horse. And I think therefore it doesn't have to be there. If you want to
Right.
practice it, you could just keep it an unranked match against
Sure.
friends. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think the first step, if we were to trim down the kits, would be to remove horse, remove soup, maybe get rid of debuff. Notice that these are the least popular kits with no real game mode to practice with them. And horse is a very specific skill set
yeah.
under a game mode that we already have a ladder for. That's build UHC. But let's go back to the Iron UHC Archer thing. Although they all represent like a bow skill set, I'd say they're all pretty different in the fact that like Iron is very short range bow based.
Yep.
UHC is meant to be mid range, and then Archer is supposed to be long range. You know, and you get that from the amount of shots it takes to kill somebody, whether or not there's regen, and all these things that tailor it towards how far away you want each of these players to be. I'd say they're different enough to keep all three kits, in fact.
Really?
I would. I'd say that if we kept those three kits, got rid of horse, I wouldn't say we still need diamond.
Well,
It is a little bit different from iron, but
Yeah.
not different enough to constitute a new kit.
I think you could definitely say that Iron is almost no melee if you don't want it to be. And if you're really good at bow, I think that the top of Iron are not meleeing,
Right.
or at least close to not. And therefore you can almost purely classify it as a short range bow.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So that makes it that Iron and Diamond are different, despite them kind of looking the same. I think with bow you could limit to Archer and UHC, and that because first of all I think in build you already have you kind of already learn the really short range bow PvP. It is an aspect of that kit, and it can be used if you want to. And the nice thing about Archer and UHC is that UHC is the kit that is about hitting your opponent and having good aim and predicting where they go. Where because it is shorter range, where Archer is really long range, where it's possible to strafe everything, and therefore strafe is really important about not getting hit. And in that way, you already hit almost every field of bow, I think, with Archer and UHC. And then the short range, you could implement in your build UHC already.
I don't know. It's short range is a much more fast paced thing, and I think that constitutes a different kit. Diamond is different. You get obviously more melee than in Iron, and I'd still say you get a lot of the melee aspects that you get in Diamond in build, even though there's a rod. That it's not much different from the way that people use bow in Diamond. I don't know. I think the skill sets, if you break it down to the bare bones skill set in each kit, I think the skill sets aren't that far off from Diamond and Build, at least. The set for the melee involved. It's the skills represented in Diamond are represented, although to a some lesser extent, they are represented in other kits, and that's good enough for me. We're gonna have to make sacrifices, I guess, like those, if we're gonna slim down the board.
Well, that's what I think with Iron, is that if you want to really be short range, you can do that in UHC. You can get close to your opponent and outplay your opponent and drive them in a corner and then forcing short range if you are good at that. And you've got to prepare yourself for short range fights against opponents if you want to be the best at UHC, but you know you're not that good at short range.
Okay,
So-
I would agree with that. It's hard to be the best at UHC if you're not good at
Short
something.
range. Yeah.
If you're not good at short range, but who's to say you can't be the best at UHC by being able to force mid range or long range?
No, but I mean, in order to be the best at UHC, you've got to tick the boxes of long range, mid range, and short range, but especially mid and short, because people can just get out of far range without getting hit. You can just strafe around your opponent, or strafe around the arrows of your opponent until you are at the range that you desire. And from mid to short, that gets more difficult. But from large to mid, that's definitely possible. So I think if you are one of the best or one of the most competitive at UHC, you got to tick both the boxes of mid range and short range. And therefore, I think it makes Iron not a necessary kit.
I think that's stretching it. Because I think, like, just by the fact that you have more health in UHC, maybe, you start out at a shorter range, but as you both get lower, you kind of distance out naturally, because you want to get hit less rather than making sure you land hits. I don't see them as similar as I would Iron and Diamond.
But then you can always put in the argument of popular, and then Iron just doesn't score high at all.
That's true. This is true. Because it's not just popularity. It's not just what the community plays more. Maybe we plan to have a game mode. I'd say Iron very well represents CTF combat. Maybe if we called it CTF, it would have a little more play. Maybe if CTF were a little more popular, Iron would have a little more play. But that skill set isn't as well represented in UHC. We have a very direct correlation between the skill set in Iron and the skill set in CTF combat. Not so much in UHC to CTF. I think that's important. Maybe we could rename Iron to be CTF, make a couple changes, add a gapple, give the people leather armor and fewer arrows, but it'd be essentially the same. But still very different from UHC.
Should we address the other kits?
I don't think we want to get too specific into like every single kit.
Well, we've addressed bow. We could address melee.
All right. Okay.
So if you have melee, that would be build, diamond, gapple, soup, debuff, no debuff. SG is kind of all round.
SG is not really melee.
No. And then there's vanilla. And it ends with vanilla.
First, I would say that you have to separate speed 2 melee from no speed melee.
Okay.
I think that's a big deal. And also, I would kind of separate rod. I think that's stretching it a little bit.
Well, I think you have build is enough to say that is the rod kit, and you don't need much more there. And then the rest is non-rod.
Yes. You can add an SG into the mix, and then you have two rod kits, which
Yeah,
I think is
SG's kind of one on a kind.
Right, exactly. And I'm not saying like let's get rid of SG. Actually, what I'm saying is we were talking before about how Diamond and Build are very similar because of
Hmm.
the way people use arrows and stuff in Diamond. If we got rid of Diamond, then SG and Build cover it, as far as I can see.
Hmm.
Uh, you don't technically have any no bow, no speed, no anything, just purely melee kits. But Diamond wasn't really that anyway. I think we could definitely get rid of debuff because debuff and no debuff aren't that similar, and debuff is vastly less popular. So
Yeah.
no brainer. Soup.
And with that, I
It's
think vanilla as well.
vanilla. Vanilla's very different from no debuff and debuff in that
Really?
yes, very much. It's much more aggressive. Um, it's much less hit trading, and much. It's a lot about like pot conservation. There's a lot of stuff you see in vanilla that you won't see, obviously, in any other kit.
Hmm.
That is in Minecraft for a reason, like these extended debuffs and strength fights. Um, Perhaps not as different from everything else.
Yeah.
I'd say there's something to be said about like how aggressive vanilla is, how it has a totally different like set of strategies than debuff and no debuff, for example. Um, but then you have like Gapple and Soup, which are almost exactly the same. Um,
Well,
Hotkey
no.
in Soup,
The Gapple
but
is just purely out hitting your opponent.
right,
W tapping, strafing, clicking fast, the whole bunch. Where Soup there's a huge factor of hotkeying, knowing when to heal, when not to heal.
well, knowing when to heal is if you heal above 6.5 hearts, you're dumb. And if you
No,
heal
but
below
like
6.5 hearts,
timing your soup, getting into your inventory and refilling.
constitutes a whole separate like, hotkeying constitutes a whole separate kit. Soup doesn't have a community behind it. Soup hasn't had a community behind it for years. Soup's never played. Gapple's played a good bit, not that much, but more than Soup. Hotkeying and healing is already represented in no debuff and in vanilla. Vanilla much more because it's more aggressive, just like Soup. But in both cases, you still have to hotkey, you still have to refill, you still have to do all these things to a lesser extent. But I don't think that difference between the speed of refilling in Soup and the speed of refilling in no debuff constitutes an entirely separate kit.
I think the thing about soup, first off, I think that Badlion made a mistake that you can't craft soup. It's like there's a few mini games where you get like a stack of both the soup, you get a bunch of balls, and then you go 0-0, and the last one that survives wins, which is
Yeah.
still pretty big.
Yeah, I
Now,
think I've heard of that, like hardcore games or something.
yeah, hardcore. Like they the kit soup doesn't have the extra mushrooms and the balls, which add that you could play until somebody makes a mistake. And I watched a few. I don't know if you know him, Basti. Seeing him
I've heard of
play
that.
and hockeying to his soups and doing that all super fast and refilling and such, that was almost like an art. That was crazy to see. So
Sure.
so therefore,
I
I kind of got respect for that.
yeah.
So that's why it's for me. I'm not 100% sure what to do there. Although on the other
I
hand,
mean,
it is kind of dead.
I don't mean to demean like the skill of refilling by any means. It's something I can't do. But again, it's something you can practice in single player. And
Yeah.
we really don't need a kit to like, especially a ranked kit, to represent that whole skill. Especially when on Badlion, we don't have any game modes that would use that skill set.
No,
I mean, if
okay,
someone came
that's
on
a fair
here,
point.
yeah,
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So someone comes on here, becomes the best at Soup, yeah, in our Soup kit. I mean, what Badlion game modes is he going to play with that skill?
it's kind of like
So
adding a we talked about earlier to add a MLG kit. It's like wow, that's skillful,
right, exactly.
but
Or
there's
like
no room for it really.
exactly, or like a who's the fastest bridger kit.
Yeah, all right.
So
Yeah, I guess soup could fall in that category. Definitely for Badline.
yeah, I think the deadest ladders are easy picks to get rid of. They've been
Yeah.
dead for a long time. We've tried a lot of things to stimulate them, and they just No one plays them.
So,
And
saying
although they
that,
do,
so far we've already gotten rid of Diamond, Soup, Debuff,
okay,
Horse,
yeah,
which leaves 8.
okay,
And what I would think is that if you want to keep Iron, you should make it a CTF kit.
okay.
Uh,
That sounds reasonable.
then I would keep it. Otherwise, I wouldn't. I still find it debatable, but CTF I would find reasonable. And then I'm still not sure if you have Gapple, no debuff, and Vanilla. I find it difficult there because
Well, getting rid of 4 dead kits is certainly a start.
oh,
Certainly an
definitely.
improvement. Having 8 as opposed to 12 kits, and the 8 most popular kits, I think that sounds like a good move. We didn't get rid of any skill sets that are too important and aren't already represented in another kit. We didn't get rid of any kits that have a huge community backing. I think if we're going to get rid of any of the other kits, we have to redesign them to kind of show some of the skill sets that we want them to show.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that's kind of what you were saying before, like crafting kits, tailoring them so that they represent skill sets of game modes, non-arena game modes that we already have on Badlion. We plan to have on Badlion. I don't know how Rush is going to turn out, the game mode, but maybe it'll have a different style of combat. And maybe we'll need to bring back like a Sky Wars kit. The discussion veers off as we get too specific into these kits. If you can find like an overarching theme, then that's the best way to go about it.
I think for now a good move is at least getting rid of those 4 kits, and then if the same problem, if we still have the same problem, which I kind of think we're gonna still have, because 8 kits is still so many
Yeah.
that you're not gonna play all 8 to show that you're the best. I think then there should probably be a discussion of, do we want to try and create 4 kits that will be the base of all PvP? But I think that is a discussion for if this doesn't work. If it does, then we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. It's no, there's no simple answer, simple fix to simulating these like dead kits. But ideally, arena just becomes more popular, and all the kits become more popular and similarly popular. So it's not just everyone playing build.
All right, so probably have a conversation what kits to make in a few months.
Sure.